Melted my brain, froze it, deep fried it, chopped up like tofu and then put it back in my head and scrambled it a little bit. That's what reading this felt like. Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. So, I have been pondering this for quite a while and I realised the more I tried to think about this, the harder it became. These are 5 books. First of all, choosing 5 was hard, but these are 5 books who not changed my life, because that sounds, I just think that's like, but these are 5 books that very much have influenced who I am, and that is a big statement. So you better believe I have some big ideas with these. Ooh, shit, wait. Okay, right, hang on, we're gonna do an honourable mentions category as well. This did it, this did it, this I'm holding. Okay, you know what, that'll do for now. Oh god, now I'm really worried about what else is on this bookshelf. So these are 5 books that well and truly have influenced who I am. The majority of these are some form of philosophy because that just really hits deep. The thing with philosophy, and I know you want a video on philosophy and I will see what I can do. Again, I did a comp lit undergrad, I'm currently doing a film degree. I've never really formally studied philosophy, I've just enjoyed it and let it melt my brain. But now of course before we get started, this is your pause moment to go get a hot drink. Or a glass of water for God's sakes. Like, editing Emma, I know you haven't drank any water in the last 12 hours. Go drink something for God's sake. Oh wait. It's not that I'm personally attacked, but like, that's just rude and true, but like rude. Right, and another thing before we get started, look at my dress. Look at this dress, girl. Look at my dress. Genuinely though, look at my dress. Sapphic hue? Right, let's move on. First of all, I find myself saying day in, day out, far more than I should. That's so Godot. Waiting for Godot, En attendant de Godot. So Waiting for Godot is a play by Samuel Beckett. Many of you know I have a very deep, deep love for Beckett. My love for Beckett comes very much from this. So it's first premiered in 1953 in Paris. It's actually originally written in French. Beckett was Irish, but he spent a lot of the war in France. I think he did a bit of like resistance fighting, which is quite cool. So he actually translated it, so he wrote the French version and his translation is also the English version. I have it in this edition. This is the complete dramatic works because I really just love him. Beckett was something I was taught, so I did this for one of my A-levels. You know how usually you hate the things you're taught? Yeah, this didn't do that to me. This didn't do this to me. This just profoundly fucked me up mentally and emotionally in like the best possible way for the rest of my life since. Waiting for Godot, the premise is these 2 guys, Vladimir and Estragon. Estragon. They are waiting by a tree for Godot. We don't know who Godot is. A lot of people like to interpret Godot as like a religious thing, but doesn't really work in French. And the name is still the same, so I don't really read it that way. They just wait by the tree and they never move. The entire time they're telling themselves that they'll wait for Godot, and when they're done waiting for Godot, they'll, you know, they'll go do something else. They'll leave. I mean, the last lines of the play are, Vladimir, well, shall we go? Estragon, yes, let's go. They do not move. This play is also where you get the quote that you give birth astride the grave. You know, the idea that your life is very, very short. You're literally giving birth into a grave. They give birth astride a grave. The light gleams an instant, then it's night once more. I was dreaming I was happy. Ugh. And also, the majority of this is also them just like talking and going around in circles, and they're mainly talking about getting erections and killing themselves, which is very Gen Z, but genuinely I feel like that is what people talk far too much about. What are you waiting for? I'm waiting for Godot. And then this other guy, I think he's called Pongo? Pozzo. Pozzo turns up. Yeah, you're waiting for something and then something else comes along that you weren't particularly expecting. But I freaking love this play. And it's something that it's so ripe for so many different like philosophical, like you can basically extract so many different philosophical arguments and interpretations from this. It's so rich from that. It's so rich for that because so much of it is going around in circles. I will argue that so many things are very Godot. And when I say something is very Godot, what I mean by that is that it's something where you're waiting for the next step, but you take no agency in getting there. That's quite a succinct way of putting it. It's kind of like you're waiting for a Deus Ex Machina moment, or where you're waiting for the next step, but what you're doing is you're not enjoying any of the meantime. Like, I remember explaining this, I have a really vivid memory of explaining this in the taxi to an ex-boyfriend of mine who had also studied this with me, and I was explaining the way that I like saw it, and I even remember like the tunnel that we were in at the time that I was explaining this. I don't know why it was stuck with me, but it's like the moment that I feel like I got it, and like I understood it, and genuinely has like done something to me. But it was a whole idea that, you know, you finish your GCSEs and then like you're relieved, and then like you're gonna go do your A-levels, and then like once you get through your A-levels, like you'll be like fine, but then once you've done your A-levels, now you have to get into uni, so then like, you know, once I get to uni it'll be fine, and then you get to uni and you're like, oh shit, you know, once I finish my degree it'll be fine, and then you finish your degree and then you're gonna do another degree, and you're like, when I finish this other degree I'll be fine, and then you're like, oh, you've done your degree, once I get a job I'll be fine, once I get married I'll be like, once I find someone I'll be fine, once I get married I'll be fine, once I have kids I'll be fine, once I have a mortgage I'll be fine, blah blah blah, then you die. It's like the idea that you never really enjoy your life because you're always looking out at that next hurdle, and because you're always looking forwards to that next hurdle, you never enjoy it. You never enjoy the bit in between. It's like you always look for your milestones, but your milestones don't actually make you happy. If anything, they're just a relief because you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. But that doesn't necessarily make you happy. And so one of my like big things that I know I have changed with is like, I don't try and look for those milestones anymore. Because it's just like, it's just a milestone, it's just a post, it's just a point of reference, but it's not. Often these things aren't big events, like even me graduating, by the way, was awful. It was 38 degrees, it was horrific, it was just not a very pleasant experience, but like we emotionally put so much weight on these things because we think they signify something. It's not that big of a deal, especially because you don't instantly change as a person between these big, well, you shouldn't hopefully change instantly between these big milestones, right? And like, it's the idea that you're putting off the things that make you happy. Living for that next step, but never living in the moment. But I really think that's the thing that's like God always sort of cemented for me, is like, you just do the thing. Just do the thing. Don't put things off. And Godot, because Beckett pushes this idea to such an extreme where he puts it on stage and makes you realise it's ridiculous. It's absurd. It's absurdism, and I think that's why I resonate so deeply with something like absurdism, because it pushes these things that we do day in, day out and don't think about how actually ridiculous it is. He pushes those things to an extreme so that we can see this mirror, this fucking clown show looking back at us, and we're like, what? I feel like reading or watching Beckett is basically, it's the reflection you see of yourself is like when you're in, you know, when you're in like those like a carnival and you're in one of those like weird fun houses and you see those bizarre mirrors. That is what watching Beckett is. It's a reflection of yourself, but it shows you how stupid some other things you're doing are. What are you waiting for? That's why one of my New Year's resolutions this year was so much, don't put off the things that make me happy. Because what the literal fuck am I waiting for? The next big thing? What do I fucking mean by the next big thing? Because you get to that big thing and then there will always be a big thing behind it. And then you're like, oh, just when I do that, oh, just when I do that. But then you'll have wasted your entire life waiting for something that didn't come. And then you're like, oh shit. Why did I waste so much time? And especially with this whole like milestone thing, you waste time on things that ultimately don't matter. And you just look at it and you're like, oh, I did all of these things because that's what other people expected of me, which is why I had that expectation of myself. It never actually made me happy. God, I love Godot so much. I love Samuel Beckett so much. I love Beckett so much. Because it really just doesn't let you accept a lot of the stupid things we do. He's like, look at yourself. Don't you look silly? Yeah, you look fucking silly. It fucks with you. I love it so much. Like, I was taught this. You're supposed to hate the things that you're taught. I mean, kudos to the teacher that I had. Like, I absolutely adored him. He was just so good. Oh, but waiting for Godot, really? What are you waiting for? And I think being in a pandemic has made that more apparent than ever. Because now we've had to. So like, what are you gonna stop putting off now? And if you catch yourself putting things off, yeah, Godot. Watch it, read it, realise how ridiculous half the stuff you do is. Hello? Louis, have you ever read Godot?
I do know what it is.
Bye.
What's dinner?
Dunno yet. It's great. It's so great. If I can find any recordings of it on YouTube, I will link it below. For when things open, go see it. I've never seen it actually on stage. I want to so badly. I want to see that, and I really want to see. I've got it. I bought it. Death of the Salesman. I've never read it, and I've never seen it. I've got it though, but I really, really want to see it. God, and what else? I really want to see Lear on stage. Really want to see it. I saw Hamlet on stage when Benedict Cumberbatch was Hamlet. I fell asleep during it. It's the bit, you know, where Hamlet's talking to all the like players and he's like doing his Hamlet emo child stuff. I fell asleep during that bit. That was not great. But it was at the Barbican and like the production was stellar. And the thing is, they had loads of like guns on the wall, and there's this like thing with, oh my god, which Russian is it? It's not Tarkovsky, because that's a film person. You don't put a rifle above the fireplace in Act 1 if you're not going to shoot someone with in Act 3. I absolutely adore Beckett, and many of you know it, but I feel like I've never formally spoken about it. Just enjoy your life and don't worry too much about it, and don't wait around for things that, you know, take some agency in your life, and don't wait for the next goalpost, especially because those goalposts are very much determined by other people. So like, just think about the things that you want to do for you and prioritize them and just do them. Make the most of the time that you have. Don't wait for Godot. Godot isn't coming. Moving swiftly on, the only person I can talk about next. You knew this, you probably knew this was going to be in here. Of course you knew this was going to be in here. This is Michelle de Montaigne. This is the complete essays. Oh my god. Oh, I had to explain to my mother at one point that one of the highlights of me being an influencer is when somebody DM'd me on Instagram being like, I bought Michelle de Montaigne because of you, and I think they must have been like 16 or something. I was like, yes! And then when you guys DM me and you're like 15 being like, I'm reading the Odyssey, I'm like, yes, Michel de Montaigne. Most specifically, his essay on friendship. It's one of his most famous essays. I actually have it as a Penguin Great Idea, because Penguin Great Ideas do a lot of like extracts from longer things. I read Sun Tzu, The Art of War recently. Oh, I'm currently reading Nancy Mitford, Love in a Cold Climate. Nancy Mitford is fucking hilarious, and I cannot overstate how much I enjoy her. I also think I comfort read her. I love that woman. I love that woman. This is the 6th of her books that I've read. How have I gone from Montaigne to Mitford? Well, like only I could. I love Montaigne. I love his essay on friendship. Mainly because of his ideas about love. And again, this is like philosophy, I guess, of like love and like, well, you know, philosophy is just a set of thought out ideas. So I like Montaigne because his philosophy on love very much reflects mine, because it's not just about romantic love. I've spoken to you guys so much about, you know, the different kinds of love, like eros and philia and storge, and like lidos and agape, and there are so many different kinds of love that you can have, and you know, not all loves are created equal. We know this, we felt this, which is why honourable mention, by the way, is going to the symposium. I think Montaigne's philosophy on love very deeply reflects my own, And this essay says essay on friendship. Just because they're your friends doesn't mean you ought to love them any less deeply. Arguably, there are a lot of my friends who I've loved much more deeply than I have, you know, people that I've had things with, people that I've even been in love with. I'm just like, yes, but I've loved my friends more. I remember this, like, reading this thing of like, oh, the people who are most, you know, satisfied with their like quality of life are like women who in their 20s invested more of their time in their friendships rather than just like romantic relationships. And like building and strengthening that love. And fuck, have you ever fallen back in love with a friend? Have you? That shit hits so differently, and it is genuinely, because it's happened to me fairly recently, and like, that is honestly the best fucking thing ever. It really is. And like, you should invest in your friendships. You should invest your love and your energy in those people, because that kind of love is different. The stakes are different. It's not that you want the entire world from them. All you want from them is to love them and love you back. And that is hugely what Montaigne talks about in this essay, is just like how you can just love another person. And it's not a romantic, well, not a romantic thing, of course. Close personal friends, you know, because Achilles and Patroclus were, Patroclus, I can never get that right, because you know that they, you know, close personal friends. I made that joke to my mum at one point and she was like, I never even thought about it that way. Just because like at school they hadn't like suggested that to her. Whereas I'm like, let me read you the one quote. So just genuinely, it's, first of all, it's my most watched TikTok.
What's a line of literature that lives rent-free in your head?
If you pressed me to say why I loved him, I could say no more than because he was he and I was I. It's from an essay by Michel de Montaigne on friendship. Not only is it a stunning piece of thought, but also a beautiful piece of writing.
This fucking TikTok has 200,000 views for some fucking reason. I don't know why. To philosophize is to learn how to die. Oh, read Montaigne, read Montaigne, read Montaigne, read Montaigne. You can read an essay every single day and you'd still be going. Montaigne is the one who says, I only quote others to better like quote myself or express myself. I can't remember which way around that quote goes, because he uses a lot of like Seneca, because so Michel de Montaigne is 16th century, you know, Bordeaux, so he's like French Renaissance. So what you get with the Renaissance is they rediscover a lot of the classical texts. So you come out of the Dark Ages. There are arguments as to why the Dark Ages are really dark. Anyway, I know the quote off by heart, so this is the point. The quote is, if you pressed me to say why I loved him, I could say no more than because he was he and I was I. Si on me pressait de dire pourquoi je l'aimais, je sens que cela ne peut s'exprimer qu'en répondant parce que c'était lui, parce que c'était moi. Because he was he and I was I. Rent fucking free. Rent fucking free. Oh my god, it just rent motherfucking free in my head day in, day out. It just massively cemented my philosophy and what it means to love another person. And that is a big thing to say. And that there are different kinds of love, but you don't necessarily need to prize one over the other. In the West, it's prized as the be-all, the end-all, the above-all. But I think it is an overrated form of love. And especially having not been in a relationship for as long as I have now, I can really tell you it's overrated. Invest in your friendships. They're much more important, especially when you're young. And also he's just common sense. So much of what Montaigne talks about is it's pragmatic, it's, you know, it's common sense. He talks so much about like Marcus Aurelius and Seneca, so he really sort of looks for Stoics. And I love Stoicism, again, as a kind of philosophy because it's so practical and pragmatic and balanced, rational and measured. And I will always say that I'm a pragmatist at heart, like, it just really, really floats my boat. Romantic capital R I find entertaining, but it is certainly not me. I prefer a pragmatic look at the world and relationships and stuff. Right, these next three are all Oxford World Classics. Of course they bloody are. But this one has melted my brain. I spoke about it recently in a cooking cooking video. You know my cooking videos aren't about cooking, right? You guys know that, right? This is Descartes, a discourse on the method. This melted my brain. These have all melted my brain, but this is the one that has really, it melted my brain, froze it, deep fried it, and then chopped up like tofu and then put it back in my head and scrambled it a little bit. That's what reading this felt like. René Descartes is a 16th century philosopher. Ergo cognitus sum. It's Je pense donc je suis, I think therefore I am. And a lot of people get this wrong. A lot of people say this out of context and just don't really know what it's about, which is always funny because it's really easy to spot. So it's the idea of radical doubt. I think therefore I am is the idea that the only thing that you know is that you exist. For all you fucking know, watching me right now, I could be a deep fake. There's no reason to say that I actually exist in any way, shape or form to you as a person. I know I exist. I don't know you exist. How do I know that you're just not a bot commenting on things? How do I know that I don't, right? And neither do you. So it's the base thing that the only thing that you know for sure is that you exist. However, if we drag the Matrix into this, even that may not be true. Your physical body and your perceived existence may also not be real. The only thing that you know is that you think. The only thing that you know is that you have some kind of ability to come up with like the internal monologue that you have, or just the ideas, or you just have something, you have a bit of something going on, but that is the only thing that you can be dead sure about. Everything else is up for debate. And that's where you get the analogy of the barrel with rotten apples. So if you take, because basically it's a commentary on the way that you shouldn't, it's a commentary on dogma and authority and the fact that you should question things. The fact that like, why are you accepting that everything, like why do you accept things without thinking about it? You shouldn't. It's just dumb. So it's the analogy of the barrel of rotten apples. If every apple is a thought and an opinion that you have, something that you just believe to be true, for example, so they're thoughts, opinions, truths. What you do is you go through each one and you examine it, and then you go, actually, I don't agree with this. This is something that was imposed on me as a child by my parents who didn't necessarily know better, but it is actually not something that I agree with, and then you yeet it away, because that is a rotten apple. So it's the idea that you go through all of those things that you think, all the things that you think, all of your, things that you accept to be true, and you go through it and you go, wait, do I actually agree with this? Is this actually reflective of my kind of thinking? And like, why am I doing it this way? Is there another way to do this? Because sometimes, I don't know, if you do things like in the kitchen, whatever maybe, and you do it a certain way, and then you're with someone and they're like, well, just do it this way. And you're like, oh, I never thought about doing it this way because this is the way, my mum has always done it. It's like that kind of idea, but then if you maybe have maybe political ideologies or anything like that you've inherited and that you've never for a second actually thought about what you actually think, that can get quite dangerous quite quickly. So it's the idea that you evaluate those and you actually exercise some kind of independent critical thinking divorced from any like authority or dogma. You think for yourself. That is what Descartes means, because we're so easily influenced and we take so much for granted, and there's so many things that we don't even realise we've adopted where we're like, wait, why am I doing this? Why do I even think this in the first place? I'm sure many of you feel this, where you have almost two reactions to something. We have an initial reaction, and then later you almost have to call yourself out on the reaction that you had, where you're like, whoa, dude, the fuck? It's like the first reaction is the one that you have been socially conditioned to have, and then the second one is actually what you think. So it's sort of that like interplay between those two things where you're like almost, not censoring yourself, that's not the right word, but almost just sort of seeing and reevaluating what the fuck you just thought, and you're like, no. But some people don't have this other voice. Some people have nobody to question them, not even themselves. And again, that can get really dangerous really quickly. So yeah, question everything, because why not? I did it recently with all forms of my gender expression, realising, fuck, how much of this do I do because of the male gaze? Do I actually like men, or do I just want men to want me but I don't actually want them? If you want a reason to do it, it's to feel more yourself and be more independent with your critical thinking. To just have critical thinking. But they always put modern art on the front, and it's kind of just a very accurate expression of how you're going to feel at the end of it. But it's only 60 pages, but it's one of the most formative things that I have ever read. And I think even though it is 400 years old, 400 years old, it is absolutely worth the brain energy it will take for you to get through it. I promise you, it will not disappoint. And if you're confused, there are so many videos and explanations online, this one included, I guess, that you can figure out really what it means. Don't just like read it and go, I have no idea what I just read. Do your research, and there are always loads of notes in any of these editions. This is the only bit that's actually the thing. And as you can imagine, I had notes on this because it melted my brain. And then I wrote loads of notes in the back because I was like, wait, let me write this out. These are my notes. Radical doubt. Go doubt something today. May overthrow a government in the process. Next up, Sard. Obviously. Sard is so much, it's philosophy. It's a sex, but it's the philosophy. I've said many times, Sard is page of porn, 10-page philosophical digression, and it's usually an argument, at least in this case of Justine, between Justine and then the libertines. Libertinism in itself is such an interesting sort of point of view to look at. It's like these people that are just so, when you're like on the top of this social pyramid, it's like, I'm very wealthy, I'm very much in charge, I'm gonna mess with people because I fucking can. A wonderful example of this. The best libertine novel in my opinion is Les Liaisons Dangereuses, Dangerous Liaisons by Delaclos. Really recommend. The film of this, spectacular. The other film of this, such a good movie, and it's based on Cruel Intentions. No, it's based on Dangerous Liaisons. Sard, because sex and philosophy go so well together, in my opinion. Of course I would fucking say that, I'm a slut for dark academia, like hello. It just goes so well together because of how taboo isn't taboo. Because sex is something that so often is behind closed doors. It's something that happens in generally very private spheres. It is like almost you, removal from society, because it's just you and whoever else is there, generally consensually one other person. So it's very much about pushing boundaries and testing limits and seeing how far something can go. And it's very often with Sard, it's the idea of like the philosophy is reenacted in the sex. The sex sets the boundaries for the philosophical discussion, and often it's just to push an extreme to see how far you can go, to see. It's about testing boundaries, and it's about seeing how far you can go. And so often it's about power dynamics and power exchange, and like the way that like pleasure and torture can really intersect, and it's surprisingly not that different from one another. And like almost the freedom that you can find within that. Sard is very obviously an incredibly extreme example. I mean, de Sade is the father of sadism, BDSM. It's just fascinating, and I think it's reframed so much of my thinking towards sex, mainly as like, it's an activity. I don't enjoy any kind of religious dogma around sex, and like purity culture is so damaging to so many, especially girls and women. Like, it's insane how fucked up some people can get from like the myth of virginity. It's not real, by the way. It's not a thing. It's a patriarchal lie used to control you. And I think reading Sard is like this, it's like a de-emotionalization of a physical act, and you're sort of seeing it almost at an extreme end for what it actually is and can be. Yeah, a lot of it with Sard is obviously torture, but then a lot of it is also pleasure, so it's sort of seeing that Again, an extreme example, but that is why it is so fascinating to read. I've said it before and I will always say it again. Sard is not for everyone. Sard is not for everyone. Where is my copy of Juliet gone? I have a 1,000-page copy of Juliet. It's in the other room on my... I've basically now got a restricted section in my own collection because I'm like, I don't want a random person in my living room that I don't know looking at my books and seeing certain things, so I now have a restricted section in my own room. I'm a character of myself at this point, but here we are. It's about limits, boundaries and extremes, and it's just fascinating to read. But like I will always say, Sard is not for everyone, and Sard is not for the faint of heart. I've never read anything like him, and I never probably will again. I don't think I also ever want to read anything like this again, but hey, it's Sard. And finally, my favourite book. This is Roxana by Daniel Defoe, or Roxana, or the Fortunate Mistress, being the history of the life of vast variety of fortunes of Mademoiselle de Boileau? The actual title of this is ridiculously wrong, but Roxana is really all you need to know. In classics, Roxana is the archetype of the drama queen. I believe she's married to Alexander the Great. I love this book. I love this book so, so dearly. And I think it has... I wrote my dissertation on it. I also wrote my dissertation on Sard, but I wrote it not on... I didn't write it on Justine, I wrote it on Juliet. Justine is like... Terrible things happen to Justine, but Juliet, her sister, is a libertine. So it's just so interesting seeing Sard's treatment of women. He doesn't seem to care that much that you're a woman, he cares that you're weak, and then obviously generally if you see women as weak, you associate the two, but like Sard is a slut for a strong woman. And by woman I just mean sort of somebody who has boobies, but very much takes on many masculine traits. Sard doesn't like femininity, I think is a better way of phrasing it, and it's interesting seeing how like a lot of cultures also don't. Even in our culture, in the West, we do not value femininity in the way that we value masculinity. We see masculinity as something to aspire to, we see femininity as derogatory and an insult and something you stoop to. But maybe that's a different video altogether. I love powerful women, and I also like pretty dresses. So this works really well for me. I like it. I already can tell you that my entire career in terms of film will be centered on women, sex and power. That's what I wrote my disso on, that's what I made my film last term on. That's the documentary I'm producing right now as well, actually, if I think about it. I have a good track record apparently with that, look at me go. But women, sex and power is so much this. She is a fortunate mistress. She is a mistress. She was a wife and then she sacks that off because she's like, nope, can't do it, not doing it. Fair enough, you do you, hun. But then the way that she uses her different relationships and with men to, you know, expand her fortune, acquire her fortune, it's so important that Roxana does not remarry. She does not remarry because she does not want to be owned by anybody. She is a mistress because then she knows she has everything her lover has and her own. He has no legal right to her. The moment you marry, you give up. I will not give up my liberty, estate and fortune to a man. Is that the line? Baby, please let that be the line. Got a different line for you. I had no inclination to be a wife again. I had had such bad luck with my first husband. I hated the thought of it. I found that a wife is treated with indifference, a mistress with strong passion. A wife is looked upon as but an upper servant. A mistress is sovereign. A wife must give all that she has, have ever reserve she makes for herself, be thought hard of, and be upbraided with her very pin money. Whereas a mistress makes the saying true, that what a man has is hers, and what she has is her own. Ah! I can't tell you how much this book just doesn't disappoint. It never disappoints. Where is that line? Where is it? And she even says it to somebody that she cares very deeply for. I don't know if she was in love with him per se. It's never really said. And also Roxana is really interesting in terms of like looking at the victim becoming the victimizer. That's a really interesting like thing you can look at with this. It is on my dissertation front cover, one second. That the very nature of the marriage contract was, in short, nothing but giving up liberty, estate, authority and everything to the man, and the woman was indeed a mere woman ever after. That is to say, a slave. Do you see why? Do you see why this is my favourite book? It's such a critique on marriage as ownership, because that is exactly what it is, especially in the 18th century, and I think it's very important to understand where marriage comes from. I have another book. Stephanie Coontz, Marriage, A History. This is about, historically, how marriages have functioned, and I think it's so important to look at it now. I'm reading, like I said, Mitford, Love in a Cold Climate, and Fanny marries Alfred after meeting him like a handful of times, and then she's ecstatic. She's ecstatic when she gets engaged to him, and it's like, so I've had situationships that were not even real relationships that were more intense than that. And I don't marry them at the end of it, fuck no. So first of all, maybe give some credence to your situationships, because historically that's more intense than anything we've done previously. But it's so important to know that marriage has its origins in ownership of women, in the acquisition of in-laws, in the production of heirs. Why does the patriarchy control like concept of virginity and stuff? Why is the whole like wait till you're married? Because then they would know who the offspring is from. Duh, it's legal reasons, and like we don't need to do that now. So you do you. Purity culture is a myth, and it is frankly disgusting. It is frankly disgusting, and also the whole like prizing, I'm filming this on Easter, the whole prizing of Mary as a virgin is also a mistranslation. It happens with the Greek translation. It's translated as virgin, but it really means young woman. There we go, Immaculate Conception, my arse. I just love Roxana. She is my feminist icon. She's not always wholly good, but I think a lot of my favourite characters in literature are not wholly good or wholly bad. They are much more complex than that. They make mistakes. They are not always good people. She often exploits people around her because of how she has been exploited in the past. And just the way that for large part she ruthlessly acquires wealth. It's fascinating. It is a wild ride of a book, and I really recommend it. I always read it as 18th century, even though it is set in the 17th century. It's set during, I think, the Restoration. But yeah! Fucking hell. Women, sex and power. Who doesn't want to watch movies about that? Men. These books have profoundly fucked me up in like a fun way. They've profoundly challenged a lot of my thinking. And now I need to tell you what the honourable mentions are before I forget. Honourable mentions are Plato the Symposium, Love, Marcus Aurelius, Meditations. Again, balance, rationality, a lot of practicality, common sense. It's, again, Stoic. And then Bay of Bay, Seneca. I love Seneca. I really, really love Seneca. Seneca is, again, a Stoic. It's just very practical, and I find it very calming. And Stoicism was immensely popular because it had these practical applications onto your everyday life, and I really enjoy it. There are modern problems with Stoicism in terms of like not necessarily toxic masculinity, but in like a oppression of showing emotion and then having feeling and then being able to discuss often problems. Generally a massive problem with men more than anything. Yes, darlings, your toxic masculinity is slowly choking you to death. And everyone around you. When bad things happen and you feel upset and whatever, you don't need to be stoic about it. It's actually incredibly bad for you, unhealthy, and it doesn't help you. It doesn't help the people around you either, because then you just get worse, and then it does get to a point where no one can help you anymore. Those are my honourable mentions. All of these things that I have mentioned have profoundly fucked me up, as I have said, in one way or another, and they really have shaped massively who I am. And I'm looking forward to the next time I read something that melts my brain and makes me go, oh fuck, who am I? But that is one of the wonderful, wonderful things that books can do, that films can do, and I really implore you to just experience other people's ways of thinking and ideas. And that's one of the reasons I love books so much, is because you can do that from the comfort of whatever sofa, nook, or bed that you find yourself in. and it's one of these things that I refuse to ever stop doing. Because I could be wrong about things. There is always a better way to do something, surely. A different way of thinking and a better way of thinking. Better is subjective, but maybe more suited to you and your tastes. That is this video. I hope that this has inspired you to read something. Please leave me down below things that have changed your way of thinking, have changed who you are. I don't feel like this changed my life, but something that is remarkably shifted and formed the way that you think about yourself, the world, and everything in it. And follow me on Goodreads, it's Emma Angeline. How have I got this far into the video again and not plugged my socials? I'm really lacking on this today, aren't I, kids? Anyway, that is it from me. Like, subscribe, and all that jazz, and I will see you guys very, very soon. Bye.